I used to believe that if you loved your child enough, they'd love you back. But on my 72nd birthday, sitting alone at the kitchen table with a single candle stuck in a blueberry muffin, I realized something far more painful than loneliness. Sometimes the child you gave everything to grows up to forget you existed. This isn't just a sad story. It's a revenge story in the quietest, most unexpected way. I'm Jeanette Holloway, widow, former elementary school teacher, devoted mother. That last title. It used to mean everything to me. These days, it feels more like a scar than a badge. I raised my son, Lucas, alone. His father died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday night when Lucas was just 5. I remember that night like it happened 5 minutes ago. Lucas was asleep, I was grading spelling tests, and then the knock came. Sheriff Perry, hat in his hand, trying not to look me in the eye. One sentence. There was nothing they could do. From that moment on, I had 2 full-time jobs. Survive the grief and raise a little boy who had just lost his whole world. I didn't have much. We lived in a weathered 2-bedroom house off Millstone Road, the kind of place with squeaky steps and floral wallpaper from the 80s. But I made sure Lucas had clean clothes, a hot meal every night, and a mother who showed up. Every single time. I taught 3rd grade at Hollow Creek Elementary. 30 years of classroom duty meant I was everyone's Miss Jeanette, even at the grocery store. Kids I once taught would stop me in the bread aisle and say, "You still make the best Thanksgiving turkeys out of handprints." Back then, I worked 3 jobs, teaching by day, tutoring after dinner, and checking papers deep into the night. The only thing I didn't have time for was myself. I never remarried. People asked, but I always gave the same answer. Lucas needs all of me. Truth? I was scared. Scared of bringing in a man who might not love Lucas as his own. Scared of putting myself first, so I didn't. Not once. And for a long time, I thought it was worth it. I was the one cheering on the sidelines at his soccer games. The one staying up helping him cram for algebra finals. The one who found a way to buy him the Nintendo he begged for one Christmas, even if it meant skipping new glasses that year. Every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every little crisis, he ran to me, and I was always there. I watched him graduate high school in a wrinkled blue gown, his tie too tight and his smile wide. He was the first in our family to make it to college. I cried that whole morning, half from pride, half from relief that my sacrifices had meant something. But life has a funny way of flipping the script. Lucas dropped out 2 years in, said the professors didn't get him. He tried photography, then online marketing, then selling sneakers from his trunk. Each time I supported him. Financially, emotionally, whatever he needed. He always said he was close to figuring it out, that something big was coming. He just needed a little more help. So I gave it, because that's what mothers do, right? But lately I've started to wonder, what happens when helping becomes enabling? And when exactly did I become the backup plan to a grown man who still expects the world to rescue him? The last time he visited was 3 months ago. He needed money for a business pitch in Dallas. He walked in, grabbed a sandwich, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "You're the best, Mom. I'll make it up to you." He didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't notice my limp from the arthritis that's getting worse, didn't ask about the pills sitting next to the toaster. He hasn't been back since. But I kept the curtains open. I kept making enough soup for 2. I even kept his old bedroom exactly the same. Because that's what we do. We leave the light on, hoping they'll come home needing us again, even if they don't deserve it. On the morning of my birthday, I woke up at 6 a.m., still running on teacher time, even in retirement. I went downstairs, fed the neighbor's cat who always thinks my porch is her real home, and brewed a pot of coffee. No calls, no texts, no knock at the door, just silence. I lit a candle, stuck it into a muffin, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Jeanette." Then I laughed, because saying it out loud made it feel a little less pathetic. And just when I was about to blow out the flame, I looked at the dusty photo on the fridge. Lucas at age 6, in overalls, holding up a finger painting that said, "My mom is the bestest. She's stronger than a dragon." What happened to that little boy? And what happened to me? I used to be the strongest person he knew, but these days, I'm not even sure if I still exist in his life. Turns out, I was right to wonder, because what came next, what I found out just a few days after my quiet birthday, wouldn't just shake me to my core. It would make me realize my son didn't just forget me. He erased me. I should have noticed the signs sooner. It wasn't just the late-night calls for money or the months of silence between visits. It was the way Lucas's tone had changed. How he called me Mom, like it was just a formality. Something he said out of habit, not love. How he never asked if I needed anything, never offered to fix the leaky faucet or carry in groceries. Even when he stopped by just long enough to grab a sandwich or borrow $100. But I kept making excuses, because that's what moms do, right? We rewrite the story in our heads to protect our hearts. That's why, when he showed up 6 months ago with a new girlfriend on his arm, I tried to see the good. Her name was Brenna. She was pretty. Tall, blonde, with that curated Instagram-perfect look that made me feel self-conscious about my thrift store cardigan and orthopedic shoes. She smiled when we met, but it never reached her eyes. And Lucas? He looked proud. Not of me, but of her. Like having her on his arm made him important. Brenna works in PR, he told me over dinner. She's got connections, big-time stuff, LA, New York, all of it. I nodded, chewing my chicken slowly. I'd spent all day cooking, made his favorite cornbread from scratch, even pulled out the good china. But they picked at the food like they'd already eaten, or planned to stop somewhere better afterward. I asked how things were going with his newest job. He said something vague about freelance consulting and branding strategy, which didn't really explain anything. And when I gently asked if he was still paying off the $3,000 I'd lent him for that Dallas business trip, he chuckled and said, "Come on, Mom, don't get weird." Weird. That word stung more than I expected. Still, I smiled and cleared the plates while they sat on the couch scrolling their phones. After they left, I stood at the sink, hands deep in soapy water, and tried to pretend that I hadn't just hosted strangers in my own home. That was the last time Lucas visited. Weeks passed, then months. My knee started swelling again, arthritis flaring worse than ever. But I didn't tell him. What was the point? I kept watching his life unfold through little online breadcrumbs, tagged photos, check-ins, a few posts where he posed in suits that looked like they cost more than my monthly pension. Then came the day at the grocery store. I was bagging carrots when Doris from church stopped me. She leaned in, eyes wide with concern. "Jeanette," she whispered, "I'm so sorry to hear about your passing." I blinked. I'm sorry." She backpedaled, confused. "Wait, you're Jeanette Holloway, right? Lucas's mom?" I nodded slowly. "Oh, my lord," she said, hand flying to her chest. "Then you're alive." I didn't know what to say. The carrots tumbled from my arms onto the floor. She bent to help me pick them up, still flustered. I must have misunderstood. I saw this video Lucas posted, some kind of engagement story thing. He talked about losing his mom when he was a teenager, said it shaped who he is, said the wedding was in her memory. I froze. I didn't need to ask for the link. I found it that night on his wedding website, slick and polished, filled with soft music and slow-motion clips of Lucas and Brenna laughing under string lights. Right in the middle of the homepage was the video. He sat in a chair, candlelight behind him, speaking in that low, serious voice he used when he wanted to sound important. My mother passed when I was 15. She was the one person who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Every day, I try to honor her by becoming someone she would have been proud of. This wedding, it's for her. My tea went cold in my hands. I stared at the screen, mouth open, heart pounding. Dead? He said I was dead? And not just that, I was being used. My supposed death was being spun into an emotional marketing tool, complete with hashtags and donation links. Help us honor a mother's love. Donate toward our dream wedding. And people were donating. Hundreds of shares. Dozens of comments like, "Crying, what a beautiful tribute. Your mom would be so proud." This is what love looks like. No, it isn't. Love doesn't lie about your mother being dead. Love doesn't bury her while she's still breathing. I shut the laptop gently. I sat back and stared at the wall for a long time. It wasn't even about the money. It was about being erased, rewritten out of his life like a typo in a resume. Have any of you ever felt that way, like someone you raised, loved, sacrificed for, suddenly decided you didn't count anymore? If so, leave me a comment with one word that describes what that moment felt like. Just one word. Sometimes knowing you're not the only one can change everything. Back in my living room, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out Lucas's old scrapbook, crayon drawings. My mom is the best. Scrawled across messy pages, tickets to his first school play, birthday cards from when he could barely spell. And I sat there, in the same house where I'd held him through nightmares and scraped knees, knowing that somewhere out there, my son was holding microphones, raising champagne glasses, and speaking about me like I was a memory. But I wasn't gone. Not yet. And he had no idea what I was about to do next. It took me 3 full days to calm down enough to stop shaking. I didn't cry right away. That surprised me. I just moved through the house like a ghost, folding laundry I'd already folded, cleaning the same corner twice, boiling tea I forgot to drink. Somehow, silence hurts more when it comes after betrayal, when you've given your whole life to someone and they decide, without even telling you, that you're gone. The 4th day, I woke up early and did what I always do when I can't sleep. I baked cornbread. It's silly, I know. But there's something comforting about mixing flour, eggs, and memory into something warm, something real. That kitchen saw more of my life than anyone else did. First steps, first broken hearts, the smell of burnt grilled cheese when Lucas tried to cook at 12, the time he hid a frog in my mixing bowl as a prank and we both screamed. All those little things that make up a life no one ever sees, except me. That morning, though, I couldn't enjoy the smell of cornbread because my hands were shaking again. And then the knock came. A sharp, quick knock. Not like a neighbor or a friend, like someone in a hurry. When I opened the door, Lucas was standing there. I hadn't seen him in months. He looked the same. Handsome, well-groomed, the kind of man strangers would trust to sell them a condo they can't afford. He smiled like nothing was wrong. "Hey, Mom," he said like it was just another Sunday. "You got time to talk?" I should have shut the door, but I didn't. I let him in because habit is stronger than anger, and because part of me still wanted to believe he was here to make it right. He sat down at the table, the same spot he used to do homework when he was 10. He even reached for the cornbread. "Smells good," he said, like we were fine. I didn't say anything, just stood across the table, arms crossed. "So," he began, clearing his throat, "big day coming up." I said nothing. "The wedding," he said, grinning now. "Everything's coming together. Brenna's been amazing. Honestly, Mom, I feel like my life's finally clicking." Still nothing from me. He laughed nervously. "All right, I know you're mad." I raised an eyebrow. Just one. Enough to say, "You think that's the word for it?" He continued. "Look, the video thing, maybe I should have run it by you first." I didn't flinch. He leaned forward. "But come on, Mom. It's not like I said anything bad. People loved it. It made people feel something. That's what matters." I found my voice then. Quiet but steady. "You said I was dead." He paused. Okay, yeah, technically, but I didn't mean it literally." "Literally," I repeated. "You used your living mother's death as clickbait." Lucas rolled his eyes. "It's not clickbait, it's branding, Mom. Brenna says emotional connection builds audience loyalty." I stared at him, stunned. "Audience loyalty?" "It's how people connect now," he said. "People don't donate unless they feel something." "So you lied about your own mother dying," I said, "to make strangers cry and give you money." Lucas shrugged. "Everyone does it, Mom. Social media isn't real life. You're overreacting." Overreacting. I'd bled for this boy. Given up job offers, sleep, friendships, vacations, new love. So he'd never feel like he didn't have enough. And now he sat in my kitchen telling me I was overreacting to being declared dead in front of the entire town. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something. But I didn't, because some slaps don't land on your cheek. They land in your soul. He leaned back and stretched. Anyway, we're going to need help covering the final catering bill. Around $4,000. Brenna thought you might be willing to contribute, since it's in memory of you. I almost laughed. Not from humor, from disbelief. I walked to the cabinet, pulled out my old recipe tin, and opened the back panel. Folded inside was an envelope. No words on it, just numbers. Every dollar I'd loaned him over the past 10 years, nearly $28,000 in total. I slid it across the table. He frowned. "What's this?" "The life you already took from me," I said. He didn't touch the envelope. "Lucas," I said quietly, "I'm not angry because you lied. I'm heartbroken because you chose a crowd of strangers over the one person who has never, ever left your side." He looked at me then, not defensive, not smug, just confused. Like maybe, deep down, he thought he hadn't done anything wrong. "I didn't think it would matter," he said. "That sentence broke something in me. You didn't think your mother's existence mattered." I turned away, walked to the sink, and started scrubbing a plate that was already clean. Behind me, he stood up. "Fine, you've made your point. Sorry I bothered you." And then he left, just like that. Didn't take the envelope, didn't hug me, just shut the door behind him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the loudest moment of my life. The house was so quiet after Lucas left, I could hear the tick of the old wall clock in the living room like it was shouting at me. Each second felt like a reminder. You're here. You're alive. You still matter, whether he sees it or not. But I didn't believe that. Not really. Not yet. After he walked out the door, again, I sat in the kitchen for almost an hour without moving. My hands were still damp from the dish I'd been scrubbing, the one I didn't finish, the one I probably didn't even need to wash. Eventually, I stood up and wandered toward the hallway closet. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I needed to find something to hold on to, some proof that I hadn't imagined my entire life. The box was in the back, Lucas's old shoebox covered in stickers and scribbles, "Keep Out" written in red Sharpie, like a secret treasure chest. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were all the little pieces of a boy I used to know. Crayon drawings from kindergarten, stick figures holding hands under the words "me" and "mommy." A Valentine's card I helped him make for a girl named Abby in 2nd grade. A faded photo of him in a Halloween costume I made out of a pillowcase and felt glue. One note, scribbled on the back of a math worksheet, simply read, "I love you, Mom. You're the best in the world." That line stopped me cold. I sat down on the floor right there, among old coats and plastic tubs of Christmas lights, clutching that note in my hand like it was oxygen. What happened to that boy? Where did the sweet, curious child who made me feel like a hero go? When did he start seeing me as a burden instead of a blessing? Was it when I started saying no? When I stopped bailing him out of every failed business and overdue rent? Was that when I went from the best in the world to someone he could pretend had died? I didn't have the answers. But in that closet, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel shame. I didn't feel guilt. I felt awake. I had spent so many years asking myself what I did wrong, where I fell short, why Lucas had turned into someone I barely recognized. But maybe it wasn't about what I failed to do. Maybe it was about what I did too much of. I had taught him that love meant giving, that mothers fix everything, that no matter how much he took, I'd find more. I never taught him how to stand on his own, because I never gave myself permission to stop holding him up. And in that realization, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not sadness, something deeper. A quiet kind of power. I stood up and closed the box. The next day, I cleaned the house. Not because I expected anyone to visit, but because I wanted to take it back. My house, my space, my life. I took down the framed photos of Lucas from the hallway, not to throw them away, but to let myself breathe. I replaced them with pictures of me and my third-grade students, old class photos, handmade cards from kids who still remembered how I taught them to believe in themselves. One said, "You made me feel like I mattered." Another, "Miss Jeanette told me I was smart before anyone else did." Those weren't just cute drawings, they were proof that I had mattered, that I still did. Later that evening, I took out my old planner, the one with the floral cover I'd used every year until my retirement. I flipped to the back pages and found a list I'd started but never finished. Things I'll do when I have time again. At the top was, learn how to paint, visit the coast, take a community cooking class, host a book club without feeling guilty about the laundry. I smiled. It had been over a decade since I looked at that list, and now, suddenly, it didn't feel foolish. It felt possible. That night, I made myself dinner, not leftovers or toast, but something real. I lit a candle, played music, ate slowly. And when I went to bed, I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because something inside me had shifted. I no longer needed Lucas to see me. I needed me to see me. If you've ever been made to feel invisible by the very people you gave everything to, know this: your value doesn't vanish just because someone refuses to recognize it. You are still here, and that matters more than you think. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of rain tapping softly on the window. Not a storm, not silence, just the sound of something washing away. I didn't slam any doors, didn't post anything online, didn't text Lucas or Brenna to demand an apology. No drama, no outbursts, no "you'll regret this" speeches. But make no mistake, something had changed. This wasn't grief anymore. This wasn't heartbreak. This was war, a quiet one, and I had no intention of losing. The next morning, I pulled out my checkbook and wrote the first donation to someone besides my son in years, $150 to the local food pantry. It wasn't much, but it felt like flipping the script. For so long, I'd funneled every extra dime toward Lucas's emergencies. But maybe other people needed help too. People who wouldn't lie about me being dead for sympathy. It was a start. I spent the afternoon at the public library, something I hadn't done in years. Not to check out a book, but to look up the contact info for a lawyer I used to know, Janet Ellis. She and I had taught at the same elementary school decades ago, before she went back to school and became an estate attorney. Smart as a whip, no nonsense, always wore Navy suits and told the fifth graders, "Call me Ms. Ellis, not Miss Ellis. I earned that diploma." When I called her office, she picked up on the second ring. "Jeanette Holloway," she said, her voice surprised but warm. "Well, you just brought me back 20 years. I told her everything, not every emotion, not every detail, but enough. Enough for her to go quiet on the line and then say, "Come in Monday and bring everything you've got." I hung up and exhaled. This was my first step toward taking my name back. Monday morning came and I put on my good blouse, the dark green one I used to wear for parent-teacher conferences. Brushed my hair, put on earrings, even a touch of lipstick. Not for vanity, for armor. Janet sat across her desk, flipping through the folder I'd brought her. Screenshots of the video, printed social media posts, a copy of the wedding website with the "In Loving Memory" page that had my name on it. She paused and looked up at me. "You're not here to sue," she said. "Not yet." "No," I said. "I'm not interested in dragging my son through court, but I need to protect what's mine, and I want to make sure he can't take anything else from me." She nodded. "So we're rewriting your will, updating your healthcare directives, and, she gave me a pointed look, "removing Lucas as your financial power of attorney." I blinked. "He still has that?" She nodded again, tapping her pen. "You signed it years ago when you had knee surgery. You said it was just in case." My heart sank. I'd forgotten. "All the more reason we're doing this now," Janet said, already drafting notes. "You've still got options, Jeanette, but silence won't protect you anymore." And there it was, the truth. For years, I thought staying quiet meant staying strong, that not complaining made me a good mother, that giving endlessly, without condition, was love. But silence had cost me more than I ever realized. After the meeting, I didn't go straight home. I stopped at the florist. "Something bright," I told the young girl at the counter, "and nothing too fussy." She handed me a bouquet of yellow tulips, hopeful, fresh, simple. I took them home, cut the stems, and placed them in the center of the dining table. That evening, I wrote a letter, not to Lucas, to myself. I wrote, "You do not owe your son your silence. You do not owe him your name, your health, your savings, or your dignity. You gave him everything once. He chose what to do with it. Now it's your turn." I folded the letter and placed it in the same envelope where I kept my most important papers: deed to the house, insurance info, birth certificate. I felt lighter, but the next part, that was heavier. Because the next day, I ordered a flower arrangement, white lilies, baby's breath, and a single black ribbon, and I sent it to Lucas's wedding planner with a card that read, "Congratulations on the upcoming wedding. With love, the late Jeanette Holloway." No anger, no accusation, just a reminder, a mirror, quietly held up. I didn't care what they thought, I just wanted him to know I saw him, and I wasn't gone. Later that week, I got a voicemail from a blocked number. I knew it was him. "Hey, Mom, I guess you heard. Look, maybe we went a little far, but it's not like people really believed it or anything. You know how these things work online. It's all for the vibe, not real life." He paused. "Anyway, if you're going to be that upset, I guess we'll just take you off the website. Okay? Happy now?" Click. No apology, no ownership, no shame, just damage control. But that was fine, because I wasn't waiting on an apology anymore. I had already started rewriting the story, this time without him as the main character. 3 days after I sent the lilies to his wedding planner, I packed a single suitcase and left the house I'd lived in for over 40 years. No announcement, no goodbye. Just a small note taped to the fridge for the neighbor who sometimes fed my cat. "Gone for a while, don't worry, I'm finally doing something for me." And just like that, I was gone. Not dead, not forgotten, just gone. Quietly, on my own terms this time. I moved into a small apartment in a retirement community just outside Austin. It wasn't fancy, but it had clean walls, a big window facing the garden, and maybe most importantly, it wasn't filled with ghosts. I left the wedding mess behind, left the envelope full of unpaid debts, the crayon drawings, the recipe cards with Lucas's smudgy fingerprints. I brought only what mattered: clothes, a small box of keepsakes, and the green planner with my someday list. Turns out, someday had finally arrived. The first week, I kept to myself. I walked slowly around the property, nodded at the other residents, and smiled politely when someone said, "You're new, aren't you?" But by the second week, I signed up for the community cooking class. "I used to cook for others my whole life," I told the instructor, a kind woman named Evelyn. "Thought I might finally try cooking for joy." She grinned and handed me an apron. There was something healing in chopping vegetables beside other women who'd lived long enough to stop apologizing for taking up space. We shared stories while kneading dough, about husbands lost, children who moved far away, dreams once paused. No one bragged, no one judged. It was the first time in a long while I didn't feel like I was being measured for how useful I was to someone else. One morning after class, I sat outside by the garden, a plate of lemon bars in my lap. A woman named Ruth sat beside me. She had white hair twisted into a bun and bright green eyes that looked straight through you. "You look lighter this week," she said. I smiled. "I feel it." She nodded knowingly. "Takes some of us a lifetime to stop carrying everyone else's weight." I didn't reply, but something in my chest loosened. I started volunteering at the community reading group for children on Saturdays, mostly kids from lower-income families, many being raised by grandparents. The first time I sat in front of them with a picture book, something inside me clicked back into place. "Miss Jeanette," one of them called me, just like the old days. "Can we read the one with the dog that gets lost again?" We read it twice, and when I packed up to leave, one little girl slipped her hand into mine and said, "You sound like a grandma, but nicer." I laughed all the way home. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table and made myself a real dinner. baked salmon, fresh spinach salad, and the last lemon bar from the plate. I didn't set out 2 plates anymore. And for the first time, it didn't feel sad. It felt free. I lit a candle. Not for ambiance, not for company, but for me. Just me. I poured a glass of wine and sat with the quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from waiting, but the kind that comes from choosing peace. To anyone watching or listening right now, can I ask you something? Have you ever done something just for yourself? No guilt, no explanation, no just in case someone needs me? If so, tell me in the comments what it was. And if you haven't yet, maybe today's the day to try. Even if it's just lighting a candle for no one but you. 2 weeks later, I received a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a wedding favor with Lucas and Brenna's names printed in gold. No card, no photo, just a tiny tin of honey that said, "Sweet Beginnings." I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it in the back of my kitchen drawer. Not to keep, not to use, just to remind myself of how far I'd come. From erased to whole. Some mornings I still reach for 2 mugs. Old habits don't vanish overnight, especially when you've spent most of your life pouring into someone else's cup before your own. But here's the strange thing. Even without the second mug filled, I don't feel empty anymore. I feel settled. It had been nearly 2 months since I moved. 2 months since the lilies, the letter to my lawyer, the voicemail that didn't even carry a proper apology. 2 months since I stopped waiting for someone to acknowledge the pain they caused me. I had expected grief to hang around like a stray cat, but instead something unexpected started to take its place. Relief. The further I got from the old house, from the weight of being mom the way I used to be, the more I realized I still had something left. Not bitterness, not pride, but a quiet, dignified kind of self-respect I hadn't felt in years. I spent my mornings now in a routine that had nothing to do with anyone else's schedule. Wake up at 6:30 because I liked the way the morning light hit the windows. Make oatmeal the way I liked it. Extra cinnamon, no sugar. Read for an hour, journal for another, then walk to the market, alone, unhurried. Pick out the best peaches, smile at the flower vendor, chat with the girl at the bakery about lemon pound cake. Small things, but mine. One Sunday, as I watered the plants on my small patio, I got a letter, a real one, stamped, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single photo, Lucas, on his wedding day. He stood next to Brenna under a canopy of white roses, her hand laced through his, both of them smiling wide. His tux was sharp, hair just slightly tousled, probably on purpose. The photo had no note, just a scrawl on the back. Thought you should have this. No love, Lucas. No sorry. Just the image. And oddly, it didn't hurt. I looked at that picture for a long time, not to memorize it, not to feel included, but to accept it. This was the life he'd built, one where I didn't exist. And that was his choice. But my life? That was still mine to shape. That afternoon, I sat in the common room with Ruth and Evelyn, 2 women I'd grown close to through cooking classes and long conversations. We played cards and sipped iced tea, the good kind with real mint. Evelyn asked about Lucas again, gently. I told her about the photo. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I think I'm better than I've been in years." Ruth leaned in and said, "You know what they don't tell women like us? That we still get to change the story. Even at 72. Especially at 72. That night, I pulled out my green planner. The list was still there. Things I'll do when I have time again. I crossed off. Cooking class, volunteering, move out, wake up with no one to answer to. And I added a few more. Visit the coast just once. Learn watercolor. Take a train ride somewhere far with no destination planned. Not dramatic dreams, just mine. To those of you listening or watching, if you've ever been left behind, forgotten, dismissed by someone you once gave your heart to, you are not what they abandoned. You are what's left. And that is still something beautiful. Tell me in the comments, what is one thing you still have left? It can be something small, a tea mug, a poem, a memory, but it's yours, and it counts. That evening, as I washed dishes under warm light, I smiled at the second mug sitting in the drying rack, not because I was waiting for it to be used, but because I finally understood. I never needed to be poured into first. I just needed to stop leaking out everything I had. I was slicing peaches in my kitchen the day the silence cracked. It had been weeks since the wedding photo arrived. I hadn't reached out, hadn't replied. Just let it sit in a drawer like a pressed flower. Once beautiful, now brittle. I was content. Or at least I had learned how to sit with the quiet without needing someone else to fill it. But silence always has a limit. That afternoon, the phone rang, the landline. Not many people still call it, so when it does ring, it usually means something's wrong. I answered, expecting a neighbor. Maybe Ruth calling from downstairs. Instead, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. Mom? Lucas. Just that one word. No hi, no apology, just Mom. Like it still belonged to him. I held the phone but didn't speak. Not right away. I didn't know where else to call, he said, his voice softer than I remembered. You moved. The house, it's on the market? Yes, I said. A pause. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I did, I said calmly. I've been gone a while now. Another pause. You could almost hear the realization settling on him like dust on forgotten furniture. I went by the house, he said, tried the key. It didn't work. No, it wouldn't. Brenna didn't believe me when I told her you might have left for good. She thought you'd just need time to cool off. I didn't need time to cool off, I said finally. I needed time to breathe. He was quiet again. Then, why didn't you tell me you were selling it? You told the world I was dead, Lucas, I said. I figured you'd made peace with me being gone. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, I didn't know it would hurt like this. That's the moment something shifted. Not for me, but for him. Because all this time, Lucas had been performing a version of his life. A son with a tragic backstory, a wedding tribute, a storyline built on emotion, but not truth. And like all stories built on illusion, it eventually cracked. Over the next few days, little pieces of his life started surfacing. It began with an email forwarded from Janet, my lawyer. Apparently, Lucas had inquired about the legal standing of my property sale, something about rightful inheritance. She responded professionally, but firmly. Your mother is alive, mentally sound, and fully in control of her estate. You are not entitled to anything she chooses not to give. Then came word from Ruth, who still kept one ear to the local grapevine. Brenna had gone back to live with her parents for a while. The wedding funds had dried up, and Lucas's PR-friendly narrative had started to look thin when people noticed his mother was, in fact, still alive. Apparently, the sympathy brand doesn't play so well when the central character reappears. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't gloat. Because this wasn't a game. This was a mirror finally shattering, and Lucas was seeing his reflection, unfiltered for the first time. One afternoon, he showed up at the front entrance of my community. The receptionist called my room. There's a man here. Says he's your son. Should I let him up? I took a long breath. Tell him I'm not available. Would you like to leave a message? I paused, then said, just tell him I'm living peacefully now, and hung up. There was a time I would have rushed to the door, offered coffee, told him, we'll fix this, baby. I'm just glad you came. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I didn't need to be. Lucas's crisis was real. But it was his, not mine to absorb, not mine to fix. The mirror had broken. But this time, I was standing on the other side of it, unshattered. 2 weeks passed after Lucas came to the building. He didn't try again. No more calls, no more messages. Just absence. But not the kind I was used to. This wasn't avoidance or disrespect anymore. This was something else. A pause. A reckoning. I didn't expect anything more. I had finally learned that closure isn't something you're given. It's something you give yourself. like handing over the last piece of pain and walking away before anyone says, they're sorry. Then one morning, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope. No return address, just my name, written in his handwriting. Still the same loops in the J and the slight tilt in the T. A son's handwriting I once knew better than my own. Inside, just one page. Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and you don't owe me anything, but I've been thinking about everything, about what I did and about what you gave me my whole life. And the truth is, I never really saw it. I saw the meals, the rides, the help with rent, the sleepless nights, but I never saw you. I never thought about what it cost you to give all that. I thought it was just what moms did. I used your love like it was a bottomless well. I never asked how deep it went or whether you were running dry. I just took. And the video, the tribute, it wasn't about honoring you. It was about making my life look better. I see that now, and I hate it. I'm not writing to fix it. I don't think I can, but I wanted you to know I know now, and I'm sorry. Lucas. I read it once, then again, then I folded it carefully and set it aside. I didn't cry, not out of coldness, just clarity, because a part of me had waited years for that kind of letter, but the woman I had become in these past few months, she didn't need it. She was already whole. But still, it meant something, not as an apology, but as a signal. Lucas was finally looking back, not just at me, but at himself. That same day, I went for a walk by the small lake near the edge of the community grounds. It was quiet, just a few ducks and the sound of gravel under my shoes. And I thought about how far we'd come, not together, but separately. He was beginning his own process now. The kind of process that doesn't come easy to men like him, men raised to believe they're the center of every story, the sun in every sky. It was his turn to sit in silence, to wonder if he'd gone too far, to feel the weight of absence and not know how to fill it. And strangely, I didn't feel angry about that. I felt peace. That night, I pulled out the old photo of us, Lucas at age 5, grinning with chocolate cake all over his face, me holding him with tired eyes and flour on my cheek. I smiled, not because I missed those days, but because I finally understood something. I was a good mother, not a perfect one, not a saint, but a good one. And the fact that it took him losing me to realize it, that was his burden, not mine. I tucked the letter into my planner, behind the list of things I still wanted to do, not to carry the pain, just to remember that sometimes even the people who hurt us most eventually look back. And when they do, we don't have to open the door again, but we can watch from the window and know we were never the ones who walked away. Lucas didn't send another letter. He didn't call, didn't show up at the front desk again. And honestly, I think that was the first mature thing he ever did in our relationship. He let the silence speak. It wasn't avoidance this time. It was acknowledgement. Life around me kept going. Ruth's daughter came to visit from Oregon, bringing wild blueberry preserves. Evelyn got a small part in a local play, playing a retired teacher who solves a mystery in a knitting club. And me? I was learning to live in this space between chapters, not waiting, not mourning, just being. But even without hearing from him, I could feel Lucas reaching, like someone knocking on a locked door, unsure if anyone's still home. I heard from a neighbor that he and Brenna had separated. Something about trust issues. Something about he hides too much. I wasn't surprised. When someone lies about a mother's death for wedding applause, it's only a matter of time before the rest of their truth starts to crack too. He'd built a house on soft soil. Now it was sinking. And while I didn't cheer for his fall, I didn't grieve it either. I'd done my grieving years ago, long before the wedding video, long before the lilies, back when I realized that being needed is not the same as being loved. A month later, I got a call from the school district. An old colleague had passed away, and they were putting together a small memorial event for retired teachers who'd shaped their communities. "Miss Jeanette, would you consider coming to speak?" the woman on the phone asked. Just a short reflection. You were mentioned more than once. My first instinct was to say no, but then I thought of the photo in my drawer. The one of me holding Lucas, cake on his cheeks. I thought of how much of my life had been poured into others, seen and unseen. And maybe it was time, not to be seen by him, but by people who still remembered who I was outside of motherhood. The day of the event, I wore my navy blue blazer, the one I hadn't touched in years. I pinned a small silver brooch on the collar. Nothing flashy, just something that sparkled when the light hit it right. When I stepped onto the small library stage, a room full of familiar faces turned toward me. Some older, some newer. A few students, now grown, smiled from the back row. And in that moment, I didn't feel old. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt present. I spoke softly, but clearly. We don't always get to see the impact we make. Sometimes we plant seeds in silence, and we never know if they bloom. But every kind word, every steady hand, every night spent grading papers or holding space for someone else, it matters. Even if no one ever says thank you, it still matters. A quiet applause followed. A few teary nods, and I knew I had said it for them, but also for myself. That night, I returned home to a small envelope tucked under my door. It wasn't from Lucas. It was from a young woman named Erin. She'd been one of my students 25 years ago. Inside was a photo of her holding her daughter. A post-it note attached read, "You told me I was smart when no one else did. I believed you. Now I'm telling her the same thing." I held the note to my chest and smiled. Not because I needed the recognition, but because it reminded me I had not disappeared. I had simply been misplaced by someone too selfish to look deeper. Lucas may never fully grasp what he lost. He may live the rest of his life with a mother-shaped silence he can't fix. And that's something he'll carry, not me. I have nothing left to prove, nothing left to beg for, nothing left to explain. He may realize one day that my absence has a weight he cannot lift, but I've already set it down. One late October morning, I opened the window and realized I hadn't thought of Lucas for 3 whole days. Not in anger, not in sadness, not even in that dull ache of wondering if he was okay. It startled me at first how peaceful that silence was. For so long, my identity had wrapped around him like ivy on old brick. Even when he hurt me, even when he forgot me, I still thought of him. But that morning, the quiet wasn't emptiness, it was release. I sat down with a warm mug of tea, jasmine and honey, and watched the wind nudge yellow leaves across the patio. There was a kind of ceremony in the way fall arrives. Everything loosens. Everything knows when to let go. And I thought, maybe mothers should learn from trees. We grow, we give shade, we carry weight, but at some point, we have to let the leaves fall. Later that day, I took out the final items I hadn't unpacked since the move. One old shoebox taped at the edges. Inside were mementos from a life I thought I'd keep forever. A birthday card Lucas made in 2nd grade, a lock of his baby hair I'd kept taped in a folded napkin, a crayon drawing of me he once labeled my hero. I touched them one by one, and then I took a deep breath and gently packed them away again, not out of bitterness, but with something quieter, grace, the kind of grace that says, I loved you deeply, I always will, but I no longer need to carry the proof of it every day. That week, I went back to the community garden. I hadn't been in a while, not since the sun started setting earlier, and the air carried that crispness that makes you remember time is moving. I pulled weeds, watered roots, tended to small things, and I thought of how long I had tended to Lucas, how I tried to keep his soil rich, even when he poured salt into mine. There was no anger in me anymore, only the knowing that I had done what mothers do. I gave, I stayed, I forgave, I waited, and now I was done waiting. A few days later, I sat across from Ruth again. She was knitting a scarf in soft lavender yarn. "You look finished," she said without looking up. "Finished?" She nodded. like you've come to the end of something and it didn't wreck you. I smiled. I think I have. That weekend, I wrote a letter, not to Lucas, not to send, to myself. You are allowed to love someone and still walk away. You're allowed to forgive someone without letting them back in. You're allowed to feel sorrow and joy in the same breath, and to choose joy. Letting go does not make you cruel. It makes you whole. I folded the letter and tucked it into the back of my green planner. Next to my to-do list, my recipes, my watercolor sketches, next to the real things I was building. Letting go didn't mean forgetting. It didn't erase the years I held Lucas's feverish hands, or packed lunches, or sat alone at school plays he never invited me to. But it meant I no longer lived from those memories. I lived beyond them, and that difference was everything. I no longer needed him to see me. I saw myself. I no longer needed him to remember. I remembered enough for both of us, and I no longer needed him to come back because I had finally returned to myself. I was folding laundry when I got the email, subject line, just checking in. No name, no details, but I knew who it was before I even clicked. Lucas, again. But this time, it wasn't a letter full of guilt or attempts to explain things away. It was a single paragraph. I saw an old photo of you today. Someone posted it in a group from the school you used to teach at. You were holding a class turtle, smiling like you just won the lottery. I never realized how happy you looked doing something that didn't involve me. I guess I always thought your life began and ended with me. Maybe that's why it was easy to forget you had your own. I wish I could go back and watch you better. Not for what you did for me, but for who you were. That was it. No begging for forgiveness, no asking for a meeting, no, can we talk? Just a whisper into a space that used to be full of shouting. And you know what? I didn't write back. Not because I was angry, but because the story had ended. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with the quiet truth. Some people only start telling the truth when no one is waiting to hear it anymore. In the months that followed, life settled into its own rhythm. I took that coastal train trip I'd always dreamed about. Window seat, paperback novel, a thermos of strong coffee, and a bag of lemon cookies Evelyn insisted I take. I painted more, laughed more, shared tea with neighbors who didn't know me as Lucas's mother, but just Jeanette from 3B who makes the best pecan pie. I found parts of myself I didn't even realize I'd tucked away behind permission slips and emergency calls and late-night bailouts. And slowly, even the wound of being erased began to heal. One morning, I passed a small bookstore downtown. In the window display, there was a sign that read, "Stories that change us forever." I stopped, looked at my reflection in the glass. I thought of all the stories I had been part of, the ones I was written into by other people, mother, helper, afterthought, and the ones I was now writing for myself, traveler, friend, woman who survived without applause. Lucas would go on to tell his version one day. He might tell people he lost me too soon. He might leave out that it wasn't death that took me, just the long, slow betrayal of being forgotten while still alive. He might say he misses me. He might even believe it. But by the time he starts telling that story, it will be too late to change the ending. Because this quiet life I built after him, this is the ending. And I'm proud of it. I once believed that silence was weakness, that staying quiet meant surrendering, losing, being erased. But now, I understand. Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's healing. And sometimes, it's how we reclaim our name without raising our voice. I lit a candle that night, not for mourning, for honor, for the version of me that didn't need revenge, only recognition from within. And in that warm light, I whispered out loud, not to Lucas, not to anyone else, just to myself. You did enough. You gave enough. You were enough. And that was the last page. To you watching this right now, if you've ever loved someone who forgot your worth, if you've ever been written out of a story you helped build, if your silence was mistaken for weakness, tell me one word in the comments that describes what you've reclaimed. It could be your peace, your dignity, your voice, or maybe just your name. Just one word. You never know who else needs to see it.